The shooting range. In this episode, pages of history, the workhorse of the Italian army. Round study, comparing tank shots and metal beasts, taking a break from the ordinary. All these supersonic fighters, MBTs, and helicopters have little difference among them overall. Sometimes you want to join a battle on something unusual for a refreshing experience. Let's see what we can go for. Well, a few things can compare to the drive we get from the top-wheeled tanks. How about the fastest one, the South African Rooikat? Now, let's choose its weaponry. Forget that classic tank turret. Let's find something with a higher rate of fire. Like a top AA gun, perhaps? Let's put it onto our kitty. Done. Now we're talking. But wait, someone tells me this machine is already in the game. Yeah, right. The ICWA Strike update has introduced the South African ZA-35. Well, why don't we try it in battle then? We'll be taking the belt filled with AP shells. They're just as good against enemy aviation, but also devastating against early MBT's thin side armor. The ZA-35 handles its primary job, anti-aircraft defense, just as well as its counterparts. No flying enemy will dare get inside a 2 to 3 kilometer range and fly out unattended by these rapid-fire guns. With radar on board, this machine, the service coverage is good enough to provide reception to each of them. Add to that the 100 plus kph capability that the Rooikat's wheelbase shows on asphalt roads, and you get a match. Getting to the capture area first? Check. Flanking enemies? No sweat. So what do we want to do at the start? Here's a few options. Number 1, for urban maps. Head off to the center right away. Find a good position. Unsuspecting tankers are soon to expose their sides to you and your trusty twin 35mm cannons. Don't forget to retreat and change position after each attack. The armor on the ZA-35 won't even stand against large-caliber machine guns, so any enemy aware of your shenanigans can easily stop it altogether. Strategy 2, best for hilly maps. If you head off to the center of the map here, you're highly likely to stumble upon an enemy, to your own nasty surprise. Instead, look for safer paths around the map, trying to prowl your way into the enemy's rear. Now, here's some final advice. You're likely to see a lot of Soviet medium tanks and MBTs. If you want to damage their sides, aim for the lower part of the hull. The armor there is thinner, easy to penetrate with your cannons, and most importantly, turn off your radar if you want to hunt tanks. When it's on, the ZA-35's antenna holds a record for its height, a whopping 6 meters. With this monster on your turret, the chances of getting undetected are slim. Italian sports cars had already been famous before World War II, while Castoldi and Cabrielli planes could compete with the best German models. Italian armor, however, did not fare as well. Italian tanks had a reputation of inefficient, unreliable, and outdated machines. Their only advantage seemed to be the simple fact that Italy had any tanks of their own. But how did this happen? The workhorse of the Italian army, the M1340, can help us learn that story. At the beginning of World War II, Italian ground forces were mostly protected by good but long outdated L3 tankettes. They had some M1139 medium tanks as well, but medium was an official designation far from reality. In fact, their specs were much closer to those of light machines used by other nations. The Italian engineers managed to create a good, reliable chassis with a diesel engine and decent armor, but the armament left much to be desired. The 37mm main gun was installed in the hull, serviced by a single crew member. The soon-to-become obsolete M11 urgently needed a replacement medium tank, so by 1937 the M1340 project was launched. It had a similar chassis, but its more powerful 47mm main gun was installed in a two-seat turret this time. The resulting machine was pretty good for the time. It had a decent amount of firepower, a diesel engine, a hydraulic turret drive, good armor, and even a planetary steering mechanism. After some tests in 1939, the M13 prototype went into production almost at once, skipping the official phase-in procedures. Italy was getting ready for war and thus was under time pressure. The first M13 had got to North Africa as early as the autumn of 1940 and proved their worth against British light and cruiser tanks soon enough. The only machine that could withstand the Italian tank guns was the thickly armored Matilda. The war exposed the flaws too. The engine was found to have inadequate power, and dust filters were clearly not good enough for the desert, leading to frequent failures. Later modifications fixed most of the issues though. The M14 got a better engine with increased reliability and also got a better gun and improved armor. It was too late though. In the autumn of 1941, the British showed their newest tanks, the Crusaders and the Valentines. To sum up, the engineers did manage to make a good tank, even a tank destroyer based on it. But the Italian industry simply could not compete with the British, and even less so with the American one. Production of new tanks was too slow and scarce, and that helped to form a poor reputation for the Italian tank-building products. Today, we're happy to introduce a new section, Round Study. Here, we will discuss rounds, armor, and their interaction. We'll start with the 122mm BR-471 APC-BC round, one of the most widespread ones for Soviet Rank 4 and 5 tanks and tank destroyers. There are two modifications we're going to talk about today, the flathead one, with letter B in its name, and the armor-piercing capped ballistic cap one, with the letter D. To better demonstrate the difference between the two, we'll take two popular tanks. The first one is the M47. Its 100mm front plate can sustain the D modification with no problem, despite its penetration reaching 230mm at point-blank range. It has no luck against the flat-headed BR-471B, despite the latter claiming worse numbers. And why is that? The reason is the round's construction. On impact with the armor, the flat warhead normalizes better, leading to a better angle of penetration. It also has more explosives. A 1/4 kilogram of TNT is enough to incapacitate the whole crew in one go. Another popular tank is the American heavy T-34. There's almost no difference at a short distance, with both rounds penetrating the front plate equally well. At 300 meters though, the AP-BC rounds perform significantly worse. The flat-headed APC-BC one has enough pen even a whole kilometer away. Calculating what happens after the penetration can be tricky, however. If you meet the T-34 head-on, don't shoot at the upper glacis. If you do, the round will hit the large turret ring, so the shrapnel will only hit the driver and the gunner. Shooting lower increases the chance of exploding the ammo rack, thus incapacitating the whole crew. Another good example is the Centurion Mark X. Its front plate is composed of two plates, 76 and 51mm thick. If you aim your gun loaded with the BR-471D, you see an equivalent of 250 to 300 millimeters, which makes penetration impossible. But once you switch to the flat-headed round, the crosshair shines a friendly green, and the equivalent number plunges to 185. It will have no problem with the beyond armor effect. You either explode the ammo rack or incapacitate the crew. Still, sometimes the D-modification of the BR-471 is better. Usually, it happens when you encounter an enemy with thick, non-slope armor, when 0-degree penetration matters most. For instance, the flat-headed round can hit a King Tiger's turret front at distances of up to 400 meters. The D-modification, however, can handle it even a kilometer away. The thick 200mm Ferdinand takes the difference even further. The flat-headed round does nothing to it, while the D-modification handles it well at a relatively short distance. As you can see in this small experiment, the B modification is better as the main type of ammo. Most of your enemies will have sloped armor, against which the flat-headed round performs better. Still, it doesn't mean that you should ignore the top D round altogether. Keep a few of them in stock, like 5 or 6, in case you encounter heavily armored German vehicles. And now, as is tradition, we're going to answer some of your questions. The first question was sent by a player called Luke Whitehouse. Why is the Italian Vampire faster? It's the same jet and the same engine? Hello there, Luke. They do look almost identical, but the engines are different. That's why the Italian Vampire is a little faster than its older brother. By the way, the Swedish J28 runs the same engine as the Italian. Josh Porter asks, what is the best way to play the F-86F-2? Hey, Josh, it's nothing to boast in terms of flight performance. However, it has an advantage, or more like 4 advantages. 4 20mm cannons with a crazy rate of fire. With some experience, the F-86F-2 will become a real danger in a frontal attack. These cannons can even successfully damage enemy MBTs on their roofs in mixed battles. Another question comes from Tony Yankee. Which navy do you recommend first? Hi, Tony. With Coastal Fleet, we recommend you start with either the American or Soviet tech tree. If you want to start with the big boys, the Germans and the Japanese are the best for a beginner. Torben Klein writes, what is the difference between the AIM-9B and the AIM-9B FGW.2 on the German F-104G? Hi, Torben. The FGW2 modification has a better homing device cooling system, but that barely makes a difference in its performance, so your strategy should stay unchanged. And the last comment for today was written by Commander Dalek. What is a float-controlled carburetor? Oh, sorry, I couldn't resist. What is a float-controlled carburetor? Hi there. The float-controlled carburetor, as the name suggests, ensures a stable flow of fuel thanks to a special float. When the fuel level goes down, it brings down the float too, opening the fuel pipe. It's a pretty simple system with a pretty serious flaw. The float stops the fuel flow under negative G force, so the engine might die mid-flight. Wait, the Daleks have found us! We're a peaceful planet! It's only a game, a simulation! We swear, please don't exterminate us! Sorry. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe, naturally, and click the bell, you must, if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to leave a like, because you do. Share your comments and thoughts, please. Pray for mercy, and see you next week. If we don't get exterminated... Oh, shut up, Grant.